Welcome back. I'm Kim Bailey. She's Fulyana Osborne, and this is Inside Exec. This week we're going to have Fulyana tell us about an article she's written on This week we're going to have Fulyana talk to us about an article that she has read about communicating the strategy.
Yes, thanks, Kim. I think this is, and Paul, I apologise if I'm mispronouncing your name. It was posted by Paul Ishley. It really resonated with me. I really liked it, and honestly, I won't do it justice just now. I will be covering it the best of my ability, but I very much recommend that you go on the link. We're going to put a link on our site for you to go through and read about it and follow what Paul is talking about. What it is, it's this time of the year, depends on the company, beginning of financial year or beginning of a calendar year like now, coming up with a strategy. Now, a lot of our listeners would have been involved in developing and communicating strategy in many capacities. Like you and I, Kim, we were in rooms where we developed that strategy, and then we were in rooms that we implemented it, and sometimes we weren't in the development, but we're in the communication and implementation. Let's talk a bit about coming up with a strategy. Usually the senior management team will get together representing all areas and come up with a strategy. They put a lot of time and effort in it and a lot of enthusiasm, and they're really important because it is about the company direction and what to do next, and it is about pulling together to go from A to B. The bit with the preparation, it's very much a process. It's very much about rational thinking and covering all of the aspects. And as Paul says, then it goes to get communicated. And he gives a very good example, and I'm not going to steal his thunder, about where he was in the room when this particular one was communicated. So please read that. But what happened is, then you come up from the strategy to the communication, and there is a disconnect. The disconnect occurs because the strategy, as we said, is based on rational thinking and a process, while communication is primarily about connecting with other human beings. It's about people. In another podcast, Kim, particularly you talked about the why, you know,
Yep.
And here it's really, really comes back to life again, because they say when you want to talk to people about this strategy, you want to be able to reach them, for them to feel it, for them to be able to understand it and relate to it. Now, nearly everyone in the room in your organisation has been through this sort of exercise before. So you've got to make sure it is relevant to them. And Paul, he talks about storytelling. So go back to where you were and what the organisation achieved, where you're at now, and tell the story. But in telling the story, you use anecdotes that will be coming from your research and from various parts of the organisation. So that will be the connection, that it means something to me. It's about my experience in the last 10 years or my current activity in my department. How is it going to affect me, and how is that strategy going to help me achieve towards the overall strategy? The storytelling is a big key factor, is doing your homework beforehand and making sure that you've got some of those stories, real stories from the people. It's by being honest and not making it sound like I've got this huge strategy that's going to get us the world. I think enthusiasm sometimes get the best of us, and we tend to want to do that because we want it to be successful. But I think you've got to be realistic and know that why. For example, if you've got to be credible. If you're standing there and not expecting people to believe you and come along with you, you've got to be truthful and you've got to be credible and just say, yes, there are going to be challenges along the way and we put this in place. Or I'm sure it would resonate with you because that's what happened with me, and we've been in both positions.
Yeah, I think that the why is the thing that resonates with me most, is that in communicating the strategy, that the why is it happening? Why do I need to know? And why should I care? And I think you've covered some of those things, but the other thing that I would like to highlight is about sharing your passion. So you are the one that's communicating the strategy. You've already become passionate about the strategy, but it's your passion about this strategy, and you need to find a way of sharing that passion for this strategy with the other people with whom you're communicating.
Good. With that in mind, I think it's also about not shying away. Two things that certainly I've got my own examples in my head about where the first thing is acknowledge the good that was done before. Whether you're in a management team 2 minutes or 10 years, it doesn't matter. There's a lot of good being done. Acknowledge that and say why was good and what difference did it make to the people in the organisation. So there is a recognition. We're not starting with a clean sheet. And then the second one is to say that trust the team, that we've got the right team and the right thinking to take this forward, and to acknowledge some of the things that we didn't do right in the past.
Yes.
So sometimes you've done something and it didn't work. Instead of letting people, stopping them, cutting them short, saying, I don't want any negativity, or instead of pretending it didn't happen, just talk about, and a couple of examples of where it didn't work in the past, where this, and this is what I learned from it, this is what's different now, and this is, etc. So you already got that information. That will create more credibility and trust when you get people on board who are, you're being real instead of imagining that's going to be lovely.
And I think that it's important to be prepared for people to say, oh, we've tried that before, it didn't work. Or it didn't work last time, why are we doing it again now? And it's about acknowledging the objections, knowing them beforehand. So before you start to get up in front of people and communicate the strategy, you need to think about what are the objections going to be. Look at it from the other side of the table. Look at it as an opportunity of resistance to change, because that's what it's going to be in some cases, and list all of the things that you think might be objections. And if they don't ask you, say them anyway.
Yes. And I think that is really good, even if they don't ask you, because some people just don't speak up, but they're thinking it.
Yep.
And this way you'll help them answer it without them having to say something.
And it also reinforces that you've thought of all of these things beforehand, that you're not just coming into the room with your message to impart and waiting for them to bounce things off you so you can just run roughshod over whatever it is, whatever their concerns are. And sometimes these are genuine concerns because they don't know. These people don't understand where they fit or how their work is going to remain as important as they see it at the moment. And so then it starts the thoughts of, well, if they haven't included me in this sort of strategy, where do I fit? Who am I? Is my time with this organisation over? And you start to build up a story in their heads that takes away from their focus on what you need them to be doing.
I would like to just read 3 points that are a perfect summary of this whole thing. They're not mine. I won't take the credit for Paul's good work, so I will just read it as written. So it's saying, in summary, use a narrative framework to communicate your strategy so that your people understand why it was chosen and why change is needed. The second point is collect and tell anecdotes to personally connect with your audience, and so that your strategy becomes a dynamic, ongoing, living narrative. And tackle anti-stories head-on, building credibility and excitement.
In that instance, we've covered everything in terms of how we would see it and how we would do it. So it's a really good article. I do encourage you, as Fulyana does, to have a read of it and perhaps read it, listen to what we've got to say, and then read it again, and then send us in your views as well, because we're always interested to hear what you think of the things that come across our desks that we find resonate with us, that we want to talk about. And if you've got other insights into communicating strategy, which is an important part of how we run our organisations these days. It's always something that we need to do, and we need to be doing it well. We'd be very happy to hear from you. But for now, I'm Kim Bailey, she's Fulyana Osborne, and this is Inside Exec.